So it's officially been 2 years since we left Australia. For those who want a little bit of context and background, we decided we had enough of the 9 to 5 grind, the 9 to 5 meat grinder that was slowly tearing our family apart. So 2 years ago, we decided to sell everything we owned, live out of 2 suitcases, and just go where the wind takes us. And in that 2 years, a huge amount's changed, for good and bad, obviously. And what I want to do in this video is give you a bit of a retrospective of what our life's been like since we decided to give up on the Australian dream, give up on Australia, and try our luck elsewhere. There's been a lot of positives and there's been negatives. I still think the positives outweigh the negatives, but this is just a little bit of a retrospective, just so if you're thinking of potentially doing this, or if you're sick of the rising cost of living in Australia, maybe it gives you a bit of inspiration to know that everything's going to be okay. So for those who don't know who I am, my name is Jimmy, and I'm one quarter of the Mitches on the Horizon family. And like I said, we've been on the road for 2 years now, just traveling through Southeast Asia, and we finally settled here in beautiful Penang, and this is now our home. Okay, so 2 years ago, I'll give you a bit of an idea of where we were at. I personally was basically at my breaking point. I was sick and tired of busting my gut and feeling like I was on a treadmill, really getting nowhere. We were renting a place, couldn't afford to buy a home. The prices of homes were increasing. I was working more and more hours and spending less time with my family. And I kept thinking to myself, why are we doing this? Why are we on this treadmill to nowhere? That's what it felt like when we were back in Australia. We were just on this treadmill that wasn't taking us anywhere. And I basically had a massive breakdown. I actually think it was a midlife crisis personally, but I had a massive breakdown. I went to my wife one day and said, I can't do this anymore. Why are we struggling, even though we earn an average Australian income? Why does it feel like we have nothing? Why does it feel like we're struggling? We don't have crazy expenses. We don't have crazy lavish lifestyles. We're just living an average, normal Aussie family life. And why does it feel like we're constantly going backwards? And, if you tackle on the fact that everything was increasing in costs, the cost of bread was going up, the cost of milk, the cost of fuel, the cost of car registration, everything was going up. It just felt like we were slowly drowning, and the Australian dream was breaking our family apart because we were spending no time together. So we decided to make the leap of faith. We decided to go, we've had enough of this, and we can sit here and complain, we can sit here and moan, or we can do something about it. And for better or worse, we decided to do something about it. So over a 6-month period, we sold literally everything we owned, the cars, the boat, the caravan, everything we'd been working towards to keep up with the Joneses. We sold everything we owned, and that was a very liberating experience, by the way. One of the most liberating things we've ever done is to go from having a whole bunch of stuff to just having cash and nothing. No obligations, no debt, just our family and our suitcases. So then after the 6 months and after we'd sold everything, we decided to leave for Southeast Asia with the intention of doing it for at least a year. That was our original goal. I'm not going to lie. It wasn't like we were intending to stay away forever. We thought we'll go away for a year, spend some time together as a family, reconnect as a family, because the thing is, when you're working massive hours in Australia, just to make ends meet, and then you come home exhausted and not wanting to spend time with your kids and stuff like that, and your kids are basically the responsibility of the school system, you just don't spend much time together. My youngest boy was basically becoming distant from me, and I could feel that, and it was breaking my heart. And we thought, if we go away for a year and reconnect as a family, we can always come back and rebuild our life if we need to. Maybe in a worse scenario financially, but at least we've shared memories. Because my biggest fear was, at any time, any of us could just kick the bucket, right? And my biggest fear is that my memory my kids would have of me, if I was to die, say for instance, would be that my dad worked a lot, and that's it. And that scared me a lot, because, I wanted to make sure that we left the world in a better place with our kids. Our kids had our values, things like that. So anyway, we packed our bags and we headed off. And fast forward 2 years, we're still on the road. We're still traveling with no intention of going back at this point in time. Obviously, things can change. But right now, life is pretty good. Life is so much better now that we left Australia. So obviously, one of the biggest benefits of leaving Australia is the significantly reduced cost of living. So, we are the first to say we're taking advantage of what's called location arbitrage. We have a business that earns Australian dollars and US dollars, and we live in a country where the cost of living is so much lower. For us as a family of 4 to live in Southeast Asia, it costs us $2,500 a month, pretty much. And that's not really missing a beat. That's pretty much doing everything. If you're curious about where we live, there's an apartment tour here if you haven't seen that. But we live a pretty awesome life right now. Because we don't have to earn as much money, we can always prioritize being together as a family over maybe doing that little bit extra work to make that extra cash to make life a little bit better. Because at $2,500 a month, we're living the life we couldn't afford in Australia. And that is something crazy to say. I never thought we could achieve the lifestyle we have with so little. Fundamentally, the thing was in Australia, this is the life I always wanted. I always wanted to spend time with my family and prioritize my family over work commitments. That's all I ever wanted to do. That's all we ever wanted to do as a family. And I just could never see how we were going to be able to do that financially in Australia. Whereas here, it's sort of par for the course because the cost of living is so low. And like I said, we take advantage of the fact that it's cheaper to live in Southeast Asia. But if you're in a position to be able to do that, why wouldn't you? In the last 2 years, we've been saving sort of $3,000, $4,000 a month, which adds up. You know, we have a huge amount of savings now. So if we do go back to Australia, we can basically just pick up where we left off, maybe even buy a house. I don't know. Because we're not spending anywhere near as much here and we're still earning a similar income. And I can explain a little bit about that in a future video. We're earning more than what we were in Australia. Our ability to get ahead has significantly improved because we basically have just been avoiding the cost of living crisis in Australia right now. So that's one huge benefit. But it's not the main benefit, I don't think. One of the biggest benefits has been reconnecting as a family. We have spent so much time together as a family, my wife and my children. We have spent so much time together, probably more than most kids get in their entire life with their parents. For a period there when we were traveling full time, we were together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for about 18 months solid. Now it's a little bit different because we live in Penang. So, you know, I might go off to the gym. Pauline, my wife, may go off to the gym. The kids go to friends' places and things like that. So it's a little bit less time together, but we're still spending most of our days together because we homeschool the kids too. So there's that element. It's one thing to spend time together as a family. It's another thing to make memories together as a family. And that is one thing that no one can take away from us now. And it's one thing we couldn't get in Australia is the amount of memories we've created, loving memories, scary memories, positive, negative, just the full gambit of emotions we've made together as a family and experienced together as a family. No one can take from us. No one can take from us. And the kids have grown so much as human beings. I mean, I say this because they've gotten older too, like they would have naturally grown. When we left, they were 8 and 6. Now they're 9 and 10. Obviously, they're going to grow. But just as far as being more rounded human beings, traveling full time has changed our children for the better. You know, little things like when we first left, we would go to a toy shop and they'd be like, can I have this? Can I have this? Can I have this? Now we go to a toy shop, they just look around, they're just enjoying experiencing it. They don't necessarily need to buy something to experience it. Other things like our kids were like deathly afraid to ask for stuff. Like we would go to the shops and I go, boys, if you don't ask, you don't get. If you want that Molly, you got to go to the counter and pay for it. And in Australia, they just blatantly refuse to do it. Here, if the boys want something, they just go and ask for it. We'll be at a hawker's market, like getting food. And I don't want to have to walk up to every hawker stall with them and to buy food. We just give them money and go and get your food, come back. And they feel comfortable and safe doing that because they've experienced that they know it's okay to do. And not only that, I really do feel like they're going to be super close brothers now. They rarely argue anymore. They have similar interests. They've lived in each other's pockets for almost 2 years now. They've just become closer as mates. They got similar interests. They do similar things. And that, I mean, that would have maybe happened in Australia as well. But I think because when you're traveling, you only have each other, they've gotten to know each other really well. And I really do feel like even if Paul and I are not here anymore, they're going to look after each other, if that makes sense. And they're going to be very, very close for the rest of their life because they've spent so much time together on top of spending time together with us as well. And the thing is, you can't replicate that. It's very hard to like fake that. I think it's also just our kids appreciating what they have because they have so little now has made a big difference as well. So we live out of 2 suitcases, and if it doesn't fit into those suitcases, we didn't carry it. It's a little bit different here in Penang now. They've got scooters and bits and pieces, but we still don't have that much. Like, we have a 2,500 square feet apartment and there's barely anything in it because the boys just don't see the need to have huge amounts of stuff. Like the other day, we bought them a floating ring for the pool here and they were over the moon. They've been playing with it non-stop for like 4 days now. Whereas in Australia, we would buy that for them and they play with it for 20 minutes and then they just wouldn't touch it again. That's what I mean by appreciating what they have. And I think it's just because we forced them to go without a lot of the stuff they had in Australia. Because like any other kid in Australia, they had a room full of toys and they never played with them. Now they have like 6 or 7 toys that they really value and really care about, and they play with them all the time. And they just don't ask for anything else. Like, I would be happy to buy them more toys. I'd be happy to buy them other stuff. They just don't ask for it, which is a really positive thing, I think, in my opinion. The next thing I think that is grossly underrated about traveling full time like this as a family is that we've made genuine friendships. And of course we had friends in Australia and we've still got friends in Australia, but it's different. Everyone's busy living their lives. Whereas when you're traveling, you meet other families that are traveling as well. You all have the same interests and you have the same objectives. And a lot of people have left their home countries for exactly the same reasons. And the friendships that we have made since we've been traveling are going to last for a very, very long time, regardless of whether we're traveling or not, just because they've been built on a mutual interest and not on a location. There's people that we may only see every 3 months because they travel off, they go somewhere else. We catch up with them and we are with them all the time because we genuinely miss them and we genuinely want to spend time with them. And although we have a couple of really good friends in Australia, that was it. Whereas we've met so many families, so many children, so many people traveling like this that we've just got friends all over the world now. And I really do feel like that cup is filled because that cup was never really completely filled in Australia. I always felt kind of lonely in Australia, and my wife was different. She has friends and, you know, obviously school mums and things like that. But me, all I used to do was just work and go home, work, go home. And my circle of friends was tiny. And I always felt lonely because of that. And I didn't realize how important that was to me until we started traveling and actually making genuine friendships. I really do think that. And I would say it's the same for the boys. I'd have to sit down and speak to them about this, but I'd say it's the same for the boys. One of the biggest things people bring up is that your kids aren't getting socialized. Well, if you look at our stories on Instagram and things like that, you'll see that we're literally spending time with other families every single day. Pretty much every day we're out doing things with families. And these kids are so amazing. All the conversations that they have are based around places they've been and mutual interests, and they appreciate the friendships they have because there isn't just 400 kids at the school. They've got to work to maintain the friendships that they have. And I would say that our boys are more social now than they were when we left because the kids that they have friendships with aren't just like school friends. They're like friends that they've made based on mutual interests like traveling, and they've met kids that like Roblox, they've met kids that like Minecraft, they've met kids that do basketball, and they've met them from all over the world, kids with different cultures, different experiences. So they're forced to learn how to fit in a social group that's not just 50 other kids that are exactly the same as them, which has been amazing. I would say our circle of friends now, Liam and Riley, the only 2 boys in this circle of friends. The rest are all like girls, pretty much, right? Like there's 9 girls in this little friend circle we currently have here in Penang, and they're the only 2 boys. So they're learning that not all girls want to rough and tumble and want to play like that. So that's been really, really good for them. And I really do feel like the people we're meeting when we're traveling, we just about do anything for them because they're true friends. You know, these guys are genuine friendships and we're so glad to have made them. But it's not all positives, obviously. There are some negatives to traveling like this. And I just wanted to talk about a few of the negatives that we've experienced over the last 2 years as well. One of the negatives is that it's pretty stressful traveling full time like this. You have the constant threat of insecurity. And that insecurity has been hard to deal with at times. We've had times where we were ready to pack up our things and go back to Australia because it was all too hard. Like money issues sometimes pop up. You know, you'll be waiting for a train and it's delayed. It's all those kinds of things. They just pop up and they can really like mess with your head because you don't have the security of like, everything's gonna be okay because we've got our house. You just don't have that. So you can be in the Philippines sitting in an apartment and the apartment's got no hot water and you're there for 2 weeks and you're like, why are we doing this? We could have been at home in our house, in our own bed that's comfortable, and yet we're choosing to do this. And like I said, there was maybe 4 times where we really thought it's time to head back to Australia. This is getting too hard. Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed and we decided to stay and keep traveling, and I think that's been for the best. But it is very stressful and it's been a strain on our relationship, my wife and I's relationship. The thing is, when you're with your partner for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're bound to have fights, you're bound to have little niggles, and you're bound to have conflict. The thing is, I think it's made us stronger personally, but there's been times where I'm like, damn, man, like this argument wouldn't have happened if we were at home, because we wouldn't have been worried about whether we were catching this train or what timetable was right. Even last night, we had a little quibble about car insurance, of all things. So yeah, I think it just, like, when everyone's under the heightened level of stress that comes with traveling like this, it's bound to create conflict, and it's about how you deal with that as a family. I would say it's one of the positives is it's made us both better at listening to each other, because we've only got each other now, and same with the kids with conflict. But yeah, that is definitely something that I didn't expect, is how stressful traveling full time like this would be, because it has its moments. Another thing that we found difficult, if we're being honest, is the homeschooling side and educating our children. Now, I do think we have a pretty good routine now, but it's taken us about a year of trial and error. The first year of traveling like this was a lot of trial and error. I think we've got a really good routine now, but that first year, it was really, really hard. And we were at the point where we were thinking it's probably in the best interest of our children if we put them back in the school system. Fortunately, we sort of nutted it out and we have a pretty good system now, and the kids are really doing quite well. But that first year, I had constant doubts as a dad, and Pauline had constant doubts as a mum of like, are we making the right decision? Because we pulled our kids out of school, but we're not educators, we're not teachers, we are parents. But I think that just comes down to perseverance. We really pushed and we got it worked out in the end. But that first year, if we were ever to go back, that would have been the reason. But we managed to work it out and everything's okay. The other thing I think people don't appreciate when they travel like this, and this is retrospectively, is how much you miss your home and your creature comforts and the little things of home. So, you know, I sit here and say how much we don't like Australia and the cost of living, but I love Australia still. I love the fact that you can just go into a park and have a barbecue. I love the fact that you can just get public transport down to the local foreshore and go for a swim. I love the fact that you can have fish and chips. I love the fact that steak is readily available and reasonably affordable. I love the fact that you can have a Bunnings snag. I love the fact that I had my own bed that was like perfect for me at home. I love the fact that our house was routine. I loved my car back in Australia. But, that's something you do miss when you travel like this. We are living out of 2 suitcases in a foreign environment, and it's challenging when it comes to food. It's challenging when you get in a bed and it's not comfortable. It's challenging, when all you want to do is go and do something, yet the public transport's 45 minutes late because you're in Southeast Asia. That stuff makes you miss home. And I must admit, there have been times where I'm like, I really miss home enough to go back. But then generally what I find is that sort of wanes. And when I start seeing videos again about how much it's costing to live in Australia and how people are struggling and how people are spending no time with their families, and, Australia is slowly breaking them, I start going, well, it's not that bad. We can always go back to Australia if we want. We can always have a barbecue, but let's enjoy the time we have together while we're doing it. Because like I said, we don't know how long we're going to be doing this for. But for now, it's definitely a foreseeable future type situation. We have a really good setup here in Penang. We're loving our current situation with our apartment and just having a car and being able to do Muay Thai and, kids having friends and everything like that are a bit of stability. We're really loving that. And I don't know really what the outcome of this video was. I think it was more just to tie back to the original video I made where I talked about why we left in the first place, because none of that has changed. None of the reason we have left has changed at all. All I wanted to do is just show that I think we've grown and our mission and the reason we're traveling has changed a lot since we first started doing it. Because to be completely honest, we could financially go back to Australia now. We could live in Australia. The reason we left is because we couldn't afford to live. Now we could. Now we're actually choosing to live over here because there's the benefits outside of just the financial side. I think far outweigh the negatives at this point in time. So like the cliff notes are, we're not going back to Australia anytime soon. And I think it does help having a bit of financial security too. I'll just quickly end on this because it's very hard to travel like this if you don't have financial security, whether that's a huge amount of savings or ability to make money online. And I've talked about this a lot in other videos, but I wanted to talk about it again. If anyone is interested in doing this lifestyle, you need to have some kind of income stream. Otherwise, you just won't stay traveling. It's just too stressful to have to worry about money. Admittedly, you don't need to make that much, but you still need to make something. So if you're interested and curious, there's a link below. Get in touch. I'll show you how I make money online, which is running a digital marketing agency. It might be an option for you, but there are plenty of other options out there, but it does help to have a bit of financial security. So guys, if you're curious, check out that link in the description. I'll also put it up here. If you haven't yet, make sure to watch the first video where I talk about why we left Australia in the first place, because you might be experiencing us for the first time, and there's a whole series of videos I've made on what it's like to live overseas and travel full-time as a family. So guys, I'm Jimmy, and we'll catch you all on the horizon.